There is a way to float on your back in salt river, buoyed over depths above mysterious waters, as you lie beneath sky dome infinity. You might recall dolphins swimming near you, or flee from remembered effervescence, that bayonetal caress, a gentle slide across an ankle or arm that blooms into stinging rash. But sea jellies don't all inflame, and though you flee or seek the feel of drifting grasses, there is a way to know your own shadow while it casts shade for minnows. There is a way to float in a present layer with your past below you and future beyond ken above you, as you lie buoyed in between air and water, between future and past, aware in unknown ways of vast, unreachable.
Helen Montague Foster is a poet and novelist. Before her retirement, she was a clinical professor in the Department of Psychiatry of Virginia Commonwealth University School of Medicine and a volunteer at the Fan Free Clinic. For 30 years, she worked in private practice as a psychiatrist in Richmond, specializing in the psychotherapy of traumatized adults. She served as president of both the Richmond Psychiatric Society and the Psychiatric Society of Virginia, and for many years represented the State Psychiatric Society on the board of the Coalition for Citizens with Mental Disabilities. As we just learned, she's also a poet. Her poems have appeared in JAMA, Rattle, Tuck Magazine, Theros, Hectoine International, and Citizen Jane. Several of her unpublished novel manuscripts placed or were finalists in the Faulkner Wisdom Competition, the James River Writer's Best Unpublished Novel Competition, and or the River City Publishing First Novel Award. An early version of her novel, The Silent Hen, placed second in the novel category in the 2020 William Faulkner Literary Competition and was published in 2023. And we have heard her talk about that book. Helen has been married to Thomas C. Foster for 56 years. They have 2 married children, 4 grandchildren, split their time between Richmond and Middlesex County, where they canoe on the tidal Rappahannock River. Her next novel, Lost Graces, is expected to be released in 2024, 2025. And I'm sure those canoe trips have inspired a lot of your beautiful poetry. So, Helen.
Thanks so much for that little introduction, Elaine. So this is a talk about dreams, a talk often interwoven about a topic, often interwoven with that of religion. And it's a talk about the present, the past, and the future. This is a talk about hope and about metaphor, the language of poetry, meditation, and dreams. There are still those who believe that the content of dreams is meaningless and that all that happens during REM sleep is that our brains fire randomly, producing dreams that mean nothing, and that cerebrospinal fluid clears itself of toxins. The glia releases substances that need to be cleared. But as you can guess, I'm not one of those people who think that dreams have no meaning. Although I do believe that there has been important information discovered about dreams and about the physiological process. I imagine that many of you already find meaning in dreams. And some of you have studied ways to make sense of your dreams and to think about dreams. When I was young, I had nightmares, and As an adolescent, I entered psychoanalytic psychotherapy, a process that enriched my adult life. Research does confirm the common knowledge that stressful experiences increases the tendency to have disturbing dreams. And in my practice, as the kind of psychiatrist who was a psychotherapist and concentrated on that work, many of my patients had devastating life experiences that gave rise to nightmares. I didn't invent the idea of dream reframing, but I wasn't taught it directly in my training. I give nods to the early psychoanalysts like Sigmund Freud and Carl Gustav Jung for their investigations of their own dreams in particular and the dreams of their patients. And to Michael Schreidel, who is a German professor who promoted the technique of dream reframing, by which I mean conscious revision of recalled dreams, which often helps resolve nightmares. Over the last century, much of what I'm going to say has made its way into our popular culture. So maybe there are no surprises here. Maybe I'll just be putting together some things that you know already. Most of us have had nightmares. Children from 5 to 12 years old are particularly prone, probably because of the challenges they face, childhood not being the time of bliss that many adults wish it was. We are functionally paralyzed during sleep, and for more than one reason, it's common to dream of falling. The mundane reasons may be related to that moment between sleep and waking, the hypnagogic and hypnopompic states. Hypnopompic when you're falling, when you're waking up, and hypnagogic when you're falling asleep, when we're not able to move. The onset could feel like falling, and maybe that could stimulate a falling dream. But when we move from a cradle to a crib to a big bed, we have to learn how not to fall out of bed. So that may be another reason why we dream of falling. Your sleep is saying, don't fall out of bed, don't move over any farther or push your sleep partner too far. I will work my way to other more important reasons. As most of you are aware, it's common for people to occasionally dream of disappointment, humiliation, danger, or of daunting tasks. When a person gives up hope, their dreams may mirror their despair. You may know this, that people thinking of suicide experience painful nightmares of being stalked by threatening figures or of being in precarious situations, stranded in high places where there's risk of falling, or endangered in other ways. And even people years removed from formal schooling may still dream of being on the spot in the classroom. When we're very young or uprooted or very old, we may dream of getting lost, which may mean we're overwhelmed or worried, we'll have trouble adjusting or finding our way through some challenge. Psychoanalysts speak of day residue in dreams. These are the things in our dreams suggested by recent events. Our sleeping minds are literally introducing the news of the day residue, into our previously established mental base. So that becomes the day residue. When you look at a dream, that's what happened that day and how it influenced our dream. And that's how dream reframing works. It's as simple as that. You think about and strategize how to improve a situation from a bad dream during the day, and you have a chance that will become the day residue of your dream, and thus gradually, if you keep doing it enough, improve your nightmare. Our minds are all one thing. It's hard to pat your head and rub your tummy at the same time. And one thought influences another. Your daytime conscious wisdom may reach your dreams because all of our myriad thoughts exist in one mind, albeit one with many divisions and compartments, and some people's solutions to trauma are to decide not to think of certain kinds of things. However, part of your brain remembers those things you're trying not to think of. It's just that you can't really solve a problem or come up with a strategy if you're saying, no, I don't want to think about that. In the case of a dream about being trapped in a filthy basement or bathroom, which is not an uncommon dream for someone accused of sexual thoughts or shamed for bedwetting or for some sexual interest, or someone who survives a rape or sexual abuse or feels guilty for some action, the dreamer in dream reframing may consciously think about scrubbing clean and redecorating a dirty space and changing it into a beautiful space. So imagining a cleaner space is a way of speaking to the parts of the mind that think in images, thus giving us a chance to dream a better dream. Public relations professionals can be great at reaching inner parts of ourselves without our realizing it, sometimes to reassure us, sometimes to tempt us, and sometimes to sway us politically or make us afraid. Our minds work in so many ways with pictures, sensory images, words, and music. Many of us may have sat in a surgical or medical waiting room and watched televisions playing videos of home renovations. They are telling you in pictures, without mentioning your medical condition, that it is possible to have your skin cancer removed step by step with Mohs surgery, or your disintegrating joint replaced, or your plumbing repaired, etc., and come out of it renovated and fresh, like those homes that people in the videos have renovated by tearing out walls and reconstructing. Had you thought about that before? That's what they're doing. It's supposed to calm you down. Renovation is possible. I mentioned that someone thinking of suicide might have nightmares about being endangered, and this leads to a vicious cycle. Even people who are suicidal have survival instincts. We can block ourselves from knowing all our survival motives, but they're built in. And if we step near an edge to jump to our death, the closer we get, the more higher our fear gets, the more our fear rises. That's part of what the nightmares of someone suicidal are warning. Do not jump, the nightmare is saying. Put that weapon down, you might fall. While we're asleep, we may not see the metaphors inherent in our dreams because we're in that literal dream space. But fortunately, we can use day residue to talk back to our nightmares. We can imagine constructing a safe stairway or guardrails or an elevator to descend from the cliff top to the beach or the boat at the bottom. We can do this with the support of a therapist, or we can do it on our own. We can imagine giving ourselves a map or a helper if we're getting lost in our dreams. That's dream reframing, and it's related to the mental process of metaphor, essential to religion, poetry, and human communication, from Aesop's fables to stories of earth-centered religions to Jesus's parables and to modern poems. Perhaps some of you studied metaphor. Our amazing, complicated minds of many parts can come up with new ideas by comparing situations and ideas. I really love that idea of Elias Howe inventing the sewing machine after a dream in which there were cannibals around a pot and they're raising the spears up and down. I mean, like, he's thinking about this during the day, and his dream comes up with that, and then he thinks about it again. And it took his conscious revision to take that idea from his dream. Is it possible to keep the needle in one place and have it go up and down and build a sewing machine that way? Like, really clever. So what I want to convey is that dreams do more than give us pleasant sleep experiences or unpleasant sleep experiences. It's a process that lets us try out solutions to things, even scientific dilemmas or political problems. We don't have access to all our mental files simultaneously. But people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, and every cloud has a silver lining, and there's so many things that we can learn from metaphor. This talk that I'm giving you now is essentially also a metaphor. You can reframe dreams, and that's a metaphor for if we put our minds to it, we may apply some idea from today, something new we've learned, or from yesterday to something that troubles us. So here's a Mary Oliver poem from her book, 1,000 Mornings. The poet compares human nature to the ocean from which we came. The sea can do craziness, it can do smooth. It can lie down like silk breathing or toss shoreward. It can give gifts or withhold it, rise, ebb, froth, like an incoming frenzy of fountains, or it can sweet talk entirely, as I can too. And so, no doubt, can you and you. And I would add, because our minds are like that. So, I was recently rewatched Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth and was really struck by his perseverance in the face of being ignored politically about what he was trying to say. How do we address it? How do we confront it? The opponents often use metaphors to accuse us of craziness. But here's a poem that I wrote in my talk and to address some of these ideas before we begin our discussion. After I was a fawn then, dropping to hide, pretending what he did was wrong, nothing. With all that surface razzle dimpling beside our canoe, and those fish faces agog at us air breathers, I couldn't keep paddling. When we splashed into a silvery about face, swarming en masse, flank to flank, I wondered why we don't get along the way they do. I don't suppose it works that way, though, not even when we're old. We don't stampede even as well as lemmings. If you assume, we individually, we're poised to leap lemming-like off cliffs, then no, I don't. We run headlong in herds, raising dust clouds and graze like goats nubbing grass into desert. What will we have left if we ignore what we do and go on pretending we didn't do it? I'm thinking of climate and our endless selfishness. It all seems simpler, though, here in this age, with distance blurred to vapor, with near sights showing signs of life. Life so small, they're like some other planet, some space removed from present danger. No surprise that Margaret Atwood won a Writer in the World prize this year. So I think we're ready for discussion. Who has questions?
So according to some sleep studies I've done, I don't get that really deep sleep. I'm aware that I'm dreaming. Mm-hmm. And like you said, I can reframe it as like, this is stupid. I'm not going to do this. Or, I can change the dream. But a recurring dream I have is where I have to solve problems that have no solution. So, one example was I had to put all these kids that were in danger on trains and put them on the right trains so they went to the right places. And some of them were dawdling and the enemy is coming up. And I can't do it. I'm driving myself crazy in the dream trying to get all these kids to the right places. What does that mean when you have to keep solving problems in your dreams?
Well, I think that's how dreams work. They're supposed to do that. They give you the problems. The question would be, what do you do for your dream reframing? Do you think of a helper? What kind of, in other words, do you add more helpers to your dreams since you're doing all the organizing there, and what other ideas might help you. Obviously, always the problems, the things that our minds are so vast, and we pay attention to so many things. We have our past inadequate.
Hi, Helen.
Jeff.
When I was a kid, I practiced lucid dreaming. From the time I was like 11 to my early 20s, I'd wake up in my dream and I'd say, oh, I'm dreaming. Okay, what do I want to do today? Do I want to fly? Do I want to go visit somebody? Do I want to have a relationship? And when I get to be about 17, 18, I started realizing that life is the same way and that the dreams are just intentions. I can change my intentions in the dream. I can use my intention to change my life in reality. And so I started writing a book called The Dream Painter. It took me 20 years or 30 years to finish, but it was all about my practice in doing this. And I just, I'm a firm believer in reframing your life, reframing whatever through dreams. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. That's really beautiful. I haven't read your book. I didn't know about your book. So yeah, that's amazing. And lucid dreaming is like wonderful when you can do it. Everybody.
Nicole and friends of mine had the same experience. Really bad dreams at the ages of 10, 11, 12 right in there. And then those tend to go away. But wow, they're wild at that point where you can wake up running and literally the house.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is amazing. It really is a big transition time. There's so much that there's so many challenges of that part of life. So, and your brain is reframing itself too. Yeah.
It was, I guess, just last night that I dreamed. I was trying to explain to somebody how to fly. And I often have these dreams where I can just levitate up into the sky and go places. But I just could not figure out how to teach that to someone else. But I'm curious about what.
Oh, well, that's good. I don't think I will comment too much on flying in dreams, but it's an important tool that, your day residue at some point in your life has introduced, whether it was when you watched Peter Pan or whenever it was, and whether it was when your parents pretended to make you fly, that most of us have in our minds. And it's sort of nice to have a magical way to escape from danger or to do fun things or whatever, and then it also is related to mood. But, what a metaphor also a dream like that could be for the ways that, well, for instance, this talk is like, well, I convince you that you should go do dream reframing. Well, maybe that kind of dream is a dream about the limitations in our aspirations versus, what we can actually accomplish. But Kelly had a question.
I don't know if this is related to dreaming, but my daughter has sleep paralysis where she says she's laying there, she feels awake, but cannot move at all. And it's very scary. But I also found out my grandmother had it. I don't know if that's related or not.
Well, of course that's related. And, so there are some people who have more sleep paralysis than others, but we all have it. It's just that are you awake at the same time as you have it? So we all have some sleep paralysis. Your dog does. You see it lying there going like this, with his little paws running as it runs across a field, we imagine. But there's some things like there are some neurological disorders that have to do with losing muscle tone in your life and also having sleep paralysis. But I think, if you really are within a family, if you really talk about the phenomena that you have, most people have had a rare sleep paralysis at some point or another. The question is it a problem? And is it combined with a bad dream? And is the bad dream that you can't move, where the bad guy's about to get you and you can't move? That would be like the hypnopompic. Usually you're waking up at that moment you've been sleeping and you wake up and you can't move. And So what do you do but introduce that idea? It's a normal physiological part of sleep. So, and unless you have a neurological condition that makes you fall asleep when you're standing up, that it's pretty normal, I'd say.
So as an artist, I have developed or learned a process of reframing my dreams through my artwork. So I had a reoccurring dream that was extremely anxiety provoking, and I decided to use this strategy, and I took the main symbols of the dream, and I put it on paper. And then I covered the entire piece of art in morning glories. So it was a transforming something that was disturbing into something that was really quite beautiful. And I've done that a few times now, and it's been very interesting to see how things do shift internally. And after that, the process I described, those reoccurring dreams stopped.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Really quite an exciting experience for me.
Yeah, oh, that's wonderful.
I'm curious, is there any significance to the time of night, or for me, more often early morning hours, that I awaken aware that I've just had a dream? Does the time you go to sleep, I mean, that number of hours you've slept, if you've gotten up and then gone back to bed and gone back to sleep, is there something that triggers the dreaming process?
Well, there definitely are cycles to sleep, and usually you dream in REM sleep, although people have been known to dream in non-REM sleep too. And so, going through the stages of sleep, that's the one closest to awakening. So you come close to awakening after your dream or after REM sleep. You might not awake during it, or you might, but when there are physiological needs, like you have to get up, or when there's something that's going on that is your air, your HVAC system goes on and makes a big roar or something. At a particular time of night, that influences it too. So definitely, there are cycles of and stages of sleep that influence when and how you dream.
That was great. I like the reframing of a dream. Now, as soon as I wake up and I'm thinking, okay, the dream is gone. What? Why?
Oh, why don't you remember? Well, that we certainly know that that's a phenomenon. If you do not think about the dream in your conscious mind, in your waking mind, it will not go into your permanent memory. So it just doesn't. Why is that? I guess there's some, neurophysiological reason that it doesn't, but it just is not. Most dreams are not recorded. They're a process that goes on during your night, and unless you wake up and think about it, it usually will fade away.
Fascinating topic, and I'm really happy to hear your thoughts about this. I'm curious, just as you were saying that in childhood there are themes that come up in dreams, I'm curious about what your observations have been about themes of later life.
Well, in later life, certainly all of us are facing mortality issues. It's hard to be this age and not be thinking about mortality. So, for instance, there are a lot of people who in midlife can put the ideas of mortality away. But, I noticed that when I was working at the VA hospital, that there were people who had put aside their thoughts of combat experience, and then there they are in a military seeming place with lots of other vets, and they're facing mortality together. But and hospitals are like that too. They're very institutional, and there you are, you're facing mortality again. So maybe that's
I guess to add to that, so I'm curious about how that shows up in dreams.
Well, that's a good question. I think maybe the best question might be posed to the people here. What have you noticed about the difference in your dreams then and now? I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, you talk about reframing bad dreams, but you can also kind of empower your dreams before you go to bed, right? So
Yes.
depending on what you ingest emotionally or visually or whatever before you go to sleep, if you watch a scary movie, you might have a nightmare, right? And when Danny was young and he was starting to have bad dreams, we would always do stories before bed. And then I would say, okay, what do you want to dream about tonight?
Oh.
And usually he would say a rainbow ship. And I don't know what that looked like for him, but he didn't have a lot of bad dreams. It seemed like setting that intention ahead of time helped him with that.
That is really beautiful. That is so beautiful. And I love the idea of confronting the scary things in your dream, where you ask, what is your gift for me? I love that as an idea of someone, if there's someone bad in your dream and you go up and you face them, you might think about that afterwards. But you might, if you do lucid dreaming, you might be able to get yourself to walk up to the scary person and say, what do you have for me? What is your gift for me? Because each part of the dream is really part of the dreamer. So it really is a part of yourself that's trying to tell you something. And it might be saying, no, don't jump. It might be trying to tell you something else. And you may be able to reassure that part of yourself that it's not relevant. It's sort of like whatever that danger is, it's past, or you might learn something from that part of yourself that you've been trying not to listen to.
Are there other questions? So I have a couple of, have a question and then sort of a thought. My dreams have been in years, the same one, over a period of years. That stayed with the stage of life that I was in when I was young, before probably, maybe by the time I got out of high school and was moving on to college, I was being stopped, but I would be walking in the dark down a path, but the path was, and I know this is a typical dream, the path, I'm not going anywhere, and I'm running from a cityscape that's on fire, and the bad guys are coming to get me. I had that so many times, almost every night. That needed to be reframed, had I known how to do that. And then years after, when I had children and I was raising my kids, I had a perfectly successful academic career. But then the nightmares came that I forgot to go to the test, or, just those failures during your university years haunted me for years. Those went away. And then fairly within the last 10 years, I had a round of tornado dreams. Those went away. And now that I'm this old age, I don't really dream anymore.
Oh, wow. So you don't recall your dreams anymore. And you probably still have them and don't recall them. But, that's great. And there's others, what important lessons they are. How do we deal with failure, which everyone has? First attempt in learning equal fail. It's sort of all of those lovely but stressful parts of life. What do we deal with risks? And, our parents are trying to make us afraid of fire and other things. They don't want us to play with matches and set the house on fire. Or set the woods on fire or anything like that. So it certainly is interesting, those dreams.
Okay, I forget I'm supposed to come up here and take over, and thank you.
Okay, well,
having so much fun back there. As we extinguish our flame this morning, may you internalize this morning's message of hope and carry it with you into the beautiful and nurturing great outdoors. Let us keep the divine light in our hearts and remember that while each of us carries a tiny flame, together we can light up the world. And now, closing words? Oh, I did that too quick, I'm sorry.
Metaphors tell more than what they seem to say. If you saw sunset gild the sea last night and smelled salt breeze and dreamt of wind-filled sail or found a shell with chambers as you slept, you'd know why.